Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you could be here, and hopefully a few more people will join. But we're going to get started. We're talking this afternoon about preventing the next gun tragedy, the work of the Sandy Hook Promise, and we're so glad everybody could join us. Let's just talk about the numbers for a moment. The numbers are absolutely alarming. 95 people die every day from gun violence, and 6 of those individuals are 18 and under. And if you do the math, that means in 1 year, 34,668 people die from gun violence, and that's 2,277 children. It is unacceptable. There is no question about that. If you're lucky, those numbers will remain just terrible data points, but for one of our panelists, those numbers became her reality. Nicole Hockley, who's sitting here on my left, her 6-year-old son Dylan was murdered at the Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Dylan was one of 26 people who was gunned down on that awful day almost 4 years ago. Nicole and other family members started the Sandy Hook Promise. Nicole's going to talk about that in a little bit so that no one else would ever have to live what she experienced and to be able to prevent other people from ever having to go through that and to have to lose a loved one. On Nicole's left, Maria Cuomo Cole is the award-winning producer of the documentary Newtown, and Newtown premiered at Sundance this year and will be screened at 7:15 tonight at the Pepke Auditorium. A little promotion right there, exactly. Maria has focused on gun violence, homelessness, PTSD, domestic violence, and sexual assault in her films. Most recently, she executive produced 2 films, The Hunting Ground and The Invisible War, for which she won several Emmys and Peabodys, and one was nominated for an Oscar. So welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure
to be here.
Appreciate it. Nicole, let me begin with you. First of all, thank you for your courage in doing what you have done, turning a terrible tragedy, the unimaginable really, into something that is going to help all of us. Tell us about the Sandy Hook Promise and what it is.
Well, the Sandy Hook Promise is a national organization that focuses on stopping violence before it starts. One of the things that, we're all business people, pretty much all of us, but we had no education in gun violence whatsoever. And one of the first things that we did was approached it very much as a business problem and saying, how can this continue and why aren't people engaged in it? And along through studying that issue in the past decades worth of work, we studied a lot of social change and other polarizing issues that hadn't made progress and thought, okay, well, we need to do something differently here. So we now we do advocate for gun safety legislation and mental health reform, but we're very much focused on grassroots community actions that anyone can do in their own family, in their own school, and we provide programs for free that teach youth and adults how to recognize the signs of someone at risk and to intervene. Because one of the most horrible things that I've learned about gun violence and certainly about our shooting is that there are always signs and signals. Almost, if you take out the accidental deaths or unintentional deaths around access, all the other ones, especially mass shootings, show signs and signals months or even years in advance. And yet there is no national program teaching people how to know those signs. So that was where that we felt we could add value in teaching children and adults, how do you intervene? How can you take action and save a life?
And what I found so interesting on your website, I believe I read that you have already prevented a school shooting. Thank you so much for the pen that I forgot. Tell us about what happened and how your work actually prevented a school tragedy.
One of the programs that we teach is called Say Something, and it's particularly focused on teens and adolescents, grades 6 and above, in telling them how to recognize the signs in their own peer group of someone who's at risk or has some sort of emerging mental health or lack of mental wellness issue. And we particularly focus on social media because kids are seeing things on social media that the adults in their lives simply aren't. And so teaching them what those signs and signals mean makes a huge difference. And in the case of a school in Cincinnati, we had been doing training on Say Something, and went back for a check-in a little while afterwards, and the school psychologist who had been trained came running out in the parking lot and said, I don't know if you realize this, but this just happened. I've been trained in Say Something. Some of our student leaders have been trained in Say Something, and they were about to roll it out to the rest of the school. And she said one of the student leaders saw a sign, saw a kid distributing one of these warning signs and signals and said something to me, and I took him seriously because I'd been trained, and it was a true threat of a person who was who needed help and was making plans to bomb the school and recruit a friend to shoot students as they escaped. And instead of that happening, that person was, that tragedy was averted, and that person got the help that they needed to ensure that they didn't try to do something again.
It's amazing. It really is. It's incredible. And we're going to talk a little bit about what some of those signs are and the preventive work that can be done around that. But Maria, I want to bring you into the conversation. Documentaries take a long time to make. Of all the topics that you could have looked at, what made you decide that Newtown and the Sandy Hook Elementary School shootings were going to be the topic that you wanted to devote your considerable attention to?
Well, I think all of us agree that the tragedy at Sandy Hook School in Newtown is one our country does not have the luxury to forget. It's one that we must all remember. And with my partner, who's here, Kim Snyder, director, right here. We felt it was extremely important to be able to tell the story of the long-term effect of the aftermath of gun violence. So we're very quick to move on to the next thing in our country. We're absorbed, we're paying close attention, but then we move on to the next tragedy, to the next news event. But what happens to these communities that are truly devastated on so many levels? And we felt that the opportunity to tell that story over a 3-year period was a very special and unique lens into the issue and into the human experience of grief and of communities coming together and pushing forth.
And congratulations on the film to you and Kim. It's amazing. And I encourage you, if you have time at 7:15 tonight, to head over to Pepke to see it. It's really wonderful. And obviously a very, very important topic. And Nicole, you are really one of the featured people in this film. And one of the things that you learn in this story, and what you learn from Sandy Hook Promise, is that these incidents, these shootings, these horrors don't have to happen. That most often there are warning signs. And I'm curious if you could just talk a little bit, Nicole, about the fact that these can be preventable.
Yeah, absolutely. That was when Sandy Hook first happened, and I knew nothing about gun violence, and I pretty much lived across the street from the shooter, kind of kitty corner. Didn't know him or his mother at all. Don't recall seeing them, but to know that was going on in our neighborhood, and when you see the film, you really get a sense of Newtown in all its beauty, because it is a very beautiful place. It's kind of like any town, and I think one of the most important aspects of the film is through people like myself and Mark Barden and David Wheeler and the teachers and the first responders, you really get a sense that this can happen anywhere and it can happen to anyone. So you want to know, what can you do to prevent that from happening to you? And when we think about signs and signals that people give off, most mass shootings are planned for at least 6 months in advance. In the case of Sandy Hook, it was well over a year. And you think about other signs and signals. 4 out of 5 school shootings, the student tells at least one other person of what they're going to do, and they're not necessarily taken seriously. When you think about suicide, which is one of the main, I think around 2/3 of all gun violence deaths are suicide. 70% of those who complete suicide give off signs and signals beforehand. So there's a huge amount of lives wounded, lives lost, and communities impacted that can be prevented if we learn to know the signs.
Yeah, it's such a good point. In our film, one of the film subjects, David Wheeler, who lost his son Benjamin, says it very well. He says, when I look back at the series of events that led up to the tragedy, I see a series of dominoes, and in between them, spaces at which any time someone, somewhere, somehow could have intervened and stopped the next one from falling. And that's really the value and intelligence, long-term strategy of Sandy Hook Promise's work.
Yeah, and then so often you look back and you say, wait a second, how did we not see that, right? And you are really helping people to identify what those signs are. Sandy Hook Promise talks about common sense solutions to prevent gun violence. There's nothing common sense about what's happening right now in our government when it comes to passing laws for gun reform. I would love to hear, Maria, why don't we start with you? Why can't any of these laws, why can't anything get passed? Why is there such gridlock when it comes to issues of gun violence?
Because we are a democracy in the United States of America. We have, this is a political issue, certainly. I mean, as much as we, position the broader issue of gun violence in our culture as one of public health, as one of mental health, and one which really requires a cultural shift for people and constituents in those districts where we can't get the votes to really let their legislators know that they, at this point, demand them, that we need stricter laws. So one reason, Perry, is that all of us need to speak out louder and more intelligently. The film depicts, as I mentioned, the community stakeholders. So how does a community get through this experience? The parish priest, the first responder, the teachers, all are affected, for a long, long time by this episode. We need those constituencies to come together and speak out in their communities and, and make their voices heard.
So Nicole, same question for you. If it's not going to happen after Sandy Hook, when young children were gunned down, when is this ever going to happen? And how are you dealing with that in terms of the Sandy Hook Promise?
Well, I absolutely believe it is going to happen.
Connecticut's done a great job.
Connecticut's done a great job, and there are several other states that have also done a phenomenal job. But when I think about like New York, California, Chicago, there are some fantastic gun safety legislation out there, but we still have an issue with access to guns, inappropriate access to guns. And that has to do a lot with trafficking, that has to do with illegal activity, lost and stolen, not being reported. There's a lot of legislative changes that can happen there, but for me, I don't think we're going to see significant policy change happen until more people get engaged. At the moment, this has been an issue, one of the far right or the far left. It's been very much pro-gun or anti-gun, and there hasn't really been much space in between for sensible debate and conversation. And in the research that I did with Sandy Hook Promise, in talking to gun owners, non-gun owners, Republicans, Democrats, different people of faith, parents around the country, this big issue came up about hopelessness and helplessness. Too many people just said, I don't know what to do. And if DC can't get it sorted out, who am I to make a difference? And that's why we decided to focus on tangible actions that you can do in your own community, because it's not about the gun. It's not about whether you're pro-gun or anti-gun. This is about protecting lives. This is about protecting children. And so, throw everything else out the door. Focus on that problem, and then the solutions become much more self-evident. Policy will follow once more people get engaged and care enough to know that, this is something that could affect you, but you can prevent it from happening.
While we're talking about that, why don't you explain to everybody what PLACA is and what your role in that is?
Sure, thank you for asking. One of the, in studying social change over the last several decades, and we studied from marriage equality back to civil rights, to figure out how other issues had found a way forward in our country. You need policy, in terms of the right laws. You need politics in terms of the right people in seats, and there's a lot of fantastic movement on that, and a lot of mobilization. You also need awareness and education and programs, and you need grassroots, and you need legal. And legal, because of the PLCAA ruling, is one of those buckets that has not been able to be chipped away at. It's a law that basically provides complete immunity for gun manufacturers from being sued. They learned their lesson very well by watching Big Tobacco and saying, you know, that industry lost a lot of money from lawsuits. What can we do to protect ourselves? And kind of under the public's nose, you know, under the radar, they got this ruling passed in D.C. that meant that they were completely immune. No one should be completely immune. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that you can create and market and sell a product in a way that has no regulation around it whatsoever and gives you free rein to do whatever you want. So myself and Mark and Jackie and a couple of others shopped around for a lawyer. We talked to a lot of law firms. Almost all of them said, this is an ironclad law. You haven't got a hope in hell. You know, we wish we could help, but we can't. And then we found
And
Josh.
you said, we're going to take it.
And we kept going until we found the one that said, all right, you know, this is a righteous cause. Let's get creative here. And studied the law significantly, and the lawsuit is against Remington and the distributor, so the manufacturer and the distributor, for negligent entrustment, for negligently entrusting a weapon, specifically the AR-15, to civilians without the appropriate safety measures or training. And the marketing that they use, which feeds into kind of military wannabe young men, basically saying, you know, you're not a man, get your man card here. You're not a real man unless you have an AR-15. It's things that are just, I find, quite immoral, and as a marketing professional, completely unethical. So that's our lawsuit, and we have every hurdle that comes up, people say, oh, this is where it ends. It isn't ending, and we're now in the discovery phase.
That's
which
amazing.
is the first lawsuit that's made it to discovery.
Is there anything that we all can do to be helpful in that?
Learn about the laws, because I think this is one of those rules that most people are not aware of until they hear about it, and it's shocking to think that, you know, you can regulate pools, you can regulate teddy bears, you can regulate, you know, probably these microphones have tons of regulations around them, but there's no regulation, no complete immunity for manufacturers.
Maria, anything you want to add to that?
And that's since 2008, right?
Since 2008, yeah.
In terms of how people can get involved, Sandy Hook Promise has, you know, a number of programs, as Nicole's described, that you can try to implement in your own community. We hope you'll look for Newtown for the documentary that will be premiering, that will be theatrically distributed this fall, and sign up for screenings, organize your own town hall conversation. We really want to bring it to as many communities as possible.
Maria, I'm curious, there's a line in the film, and I think, Nicole, it was your husband, he's standing in Congress and says, right, and what was the line when he's standing there? It's this, I'm struck right now, Nicole, by this accidental activist that you have been forced to become.
Mark
What was
says,
that line?
I'm a professional musician. I don't belong in the halls of Congress. They were lobbying for the 2013 bill.
Because it really strikes me, here you are, your life has turned 180 degrees. You probably never thought you were going to be sitting here becoming so involved in this issue. How is this feeling to be able to do this kind of work and to make these kinds of changes?
My life ended on December 14th, 2012. There's really no other way to put it. The person that I was then bears very little resemblance to the person that I am now. You know, I was a marketing professional, and, you know, I could happily talk to audiences for hours at a time about private health care and annuities and investments, because that was my world. I lived in England for 18 years, where gun violence isn't even a topic of conversation. And I had 2 boys. And now I still have 2 boys, but I have one who's no longer here. And everything has changed completely. And while I appreciate the opportunity of being here and talking to all of you, I honestly wish I wasn't here.
I'm sure.
I'd rather be at home playing in the pool with my 2 kids. I mean, who wouldn't? But that's not how my journey is playing out. I don't know necessarily what my path is going forward. I'm figuring that out every single day at a time, but I know that I have a responsibility to Dylan to honor his death and prevent that from happening to others, to protect my surviving son Jake and his future, and to, looking out here, I'm seeing a lot of parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles, siblings, to ensure that none of you ever have to be in my shoes. And that's why I would urge you to go to see Newtown, the documentary, and share it, because it's a hard watch, I won't lie, but if you keep looking away from the issue, then in all honesty, you're the way I was before 12/14. You're more part of the problem than you are the solution, because this is not something that you should shy away from. This is something you should look full on in the face and understand that it could be you. And then come over to sandyhookpromise.org, make the promise, get involved, bring the programs to your community, and be part of preventing it, because you don't want to be in my shoes, plain and simple.
And yet, Nicole, I think that there's a feeling, a malaise that comes with the fact that you look at Congress and you say, if they can't get anything done, how am I supposed to help? How am I supposed to make a difference?
But we can get something done with Congress, and that's our job to do. So, we've had stricter gun laws in this country. We had an assault ban, right?
Right.
For a decade, and we can do it again. We can work toward stricter gun laws. We're absolutely hopeful that that will happen.
Nicole, talk to us about the 4-step approach that you lay out at Sandy Hook Promise.
Sure. Well, in terms of the programs, I'll just at a very high level, there are 4 programs that we offer for free. We go out to schools across the country. There's 2 that are for kids and 2 that are for adults. The ones that are for kids, one is called Start with Hello, and it teaches social inclusion and changing the school culture from within. The second one is called Say Something, which I already mentioned, which teaches teens in particular how to recognize at-risk behaviors on social media and take action. The 2 for adults, one is run by the National Council for Behavioral Health and is called Youth Mental Health First Aid, where we teach educators, SROs, parents, how to recognize the signs of an emerging mental illness or crisis, and that particularly as it relates to suicide for us. And then the 4th one is Safety Assessment and Intervention, where we teach schools a multidisciplinary team within a school, a process for dealing with every single threat that comes into a school, and then dealing with it if it's imminent, but more importantly, if it's something that is just going on, how do you get under the skin, under the surface of what's going on in that kid's life to get them help before it escalates? And these have enormous benefits. 2 of them are evidence-based programs and 2 are evidence-informed. In the last just over a year, we have trained 865,000 students and adults across the country in around 1,200 schools. We're in all 50 states. We have a network of 40 national trainers. We're currently expanding that. So if anyone has any sort of interest in becoming a trainer, we will happily train you, and then you can go out to your school or community and deliver it. It's making a difference. We also have promise leaders in all 50 states. Last week, we finally got North Dakota on board. 2,400 people across the country that are saying, I want to bring your programs to my community. And this is really only in the last year. We're on the ground in Ohio, Connecticut, and Miami-Dade public schools. We're about to expand throughout California, New York, Chicago, Louisiana, and we have requests in from Alaska, Mississippi, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, because the issue of gun violence is everywhere. And these programs, because they don't talk about the gun, they're not talking about the physical aspect, it's talking about what can you do in those days, weeks, months, or years before someone picks up a weapon to hurt themselves or someone else. And that's not something that people fight about.
It's really amazing, and I encourage everybody to go to the website. It's really quite extraordinary what you've done in such a short period of time. How many families are working with you?
So out of the 26 families that lost someone at Sandy Hook, we started off kind of big, around 17 families. There's now 3 core families that work with us, myself and Mark Barden, who are co-managing directors, who both lost our sons, and David, Bill Sherlock, whose wife Mary was the school psychologist who was killed while running towards the shooter. He's on our board as well. And there are some other families that dip in and out as they want, but grief is a very unique and individual experience. This is what works for me, Mark, and Bill. It's not necessarily the right time or the right thing for some other people.
I want to open it up to questions from anybody in the audience. We've got microphones, and this is being recorded, so we'd love for you to stand up and say your name and then ask your question from our panelists. Who would like to start? Right in the middle.
I'm Eric Ellenbogen. I want to ask you, setting aside gun regulation, if there's anything in your journey that you've learned or any insights that you have about uniquely American culture that precipitates these things, which does not seem to be so much the case in any other part of the world.
For me, I mean, the mental health and wellness issue is everywhere. Culturally, different countries might deal with it differently, but that's, there's nothing getting around that. I think what makes America unique is the combination of people that are lacking that wellness, that ability to self-regulate in terms of anger management, conflict resolution, the same as we see everywhere. But our unique addition to that is easy access to weapons. I mean, looking around this room, there's, if we disagree with something, we're not all going to just start up and punching each other's lights out or shooting guns. We have ways of regulating ourselves and coping, but not everyone does. And when you think about, in the instance of suicide, for example, someone who's dealing with severe depression, a significant mental illness, you combine that with access, and that's when you have a lethal combination. There's a lot that we can do legislatively around violent crime with a gun, because that's around access in terms of guns being stolen or guns being illegally trafficked. But when you think about school shootings, when you think about suicide, when you think about threats, they almost always come from inside the home. That's how they get their guns. So ensuring safety. I mean, we're not going to get rid of guns in America. That's unrealistic. So let's ensure that where there are guns, they're stored safely, people are trained appropriately on how to use them, and that we're not giving access, easy access, to people who are not capable of handling that responsibility. I don't know if there's anything you'd add to that.
Yes.
Hello, Ariadne Platero, and I'm full of admiration for the work that you do. I'm wondering how you balance the need to inform in schools with the need to protect childhoods and a sense of a lack of anxiety in these children. How you balance those two sides?
That's a great question. And I'm kind of going to throw it back just a little bit first, because one of the things that we've seen increase massively since the shooting at Sandy Hook School were our active shooter drills and lockdowns. And we are now creating a lockdown generation that this is what our kids are going to remember from their school days. And that makes me kind of angry, if I'm honest with you, because my boy goes to school to learn, not to practice finding a dark corner or hide in a closet or stand on a toilet in a bathroom and be quiet. These are these are memories that our children are gonna hold with them and take with them, which is gonna do a lot for cultural change in this country just on its own. But in terms of our programs, I would never want to go in and frighten a child. That would be completely wrong. The programs are about empowering children to take action themselves and to help others. But that's why Say Something, which does talk about at-risk behaviors, is really targeted for kids age 12 and above. They get it, you know, and when you think about middle school and high school, these are kids that, you know, they're becoming much more aware of the world around them. They're exposed to so many more things, and they're more, I think, socially aware of wanting to look out for each other. And they just want to know, you know, give me the tools to be able to do that. So we don't, you know, the Start With Hello program where we talk about social isolation, that's a very warm program that can go down to grade 2, because it's about, you know, seeing someone sitting alone at the lunch table and going over and saying hello and sitting with them. But the other programs, you know, we touch on violence, of course, because when you think, you know, there's 2 million acts of violence in our schools every single year. The kids are living through it. They're aware of it. So they want to be part of the solution as well.
I'll just add, you know, and hopefully parents are part of this cultural shift as well, and benefiting from increased education. So I've been involved as an advocate on the gun issue for many years. I never asked when my kids were very small if their friends' homes, if the parents had weapons in the homes, and if they did, if they were locked securely. And of course I should have. So in the last, you know, 10 years, there's been so much increased education. Some of you may have read that the AMA last week came out and defined the gun violence issue in America as a public health issue. And pediatricians for many years now, a good 7 years, have been encouraging their patients and parents, you know, to make sure they ask that question as a public health protocol.
Really, what is that conversation? Would you do that?
Did you ever ask? You never
It
asked
wouldn't
me.
have crossed my mind to ask. It's so interesting to hear you say that.
Yeah, we ask if parents are home, if
Right, absolutely.
you know, we ask a number of questions, but we don't tend to ask that. And of course, it's you know, it's certainly plausible that the homeowners own a handgun or, you know, a rifle or other weapons, and you ask, you know, if you do, please, can, you know, will the gun be locked up securely? And you can ask how. We ask if their computers are locked, if there's access to the internet, but we don't
Where the
ask about
alcohol
weapons.
is, right.
Where
No,
the
that's
alcohol
exactly
is.
right. Is
Are
that
there peanuts, you know, if you've got
Yeah,
a peanut
no,
allergy.
it's such a good, I've
we
never
have to
actually
get
thought
over
about
this.
it.
We have to get over this fear of asking and about having a conversation about firearms, because someone might assume because you're asking, therefore you think I'm a bad person or a bad parent. No, this is just a genuine conversation. And, you know, if I ask a friend, parents of one of Jake's friends, if they have a gun and you know, if they have firearms or weapons and are they going to be stored safely, it's not saying you're a bad person because you own firearms. It's just, are you a responsible gun owner? And if you have firearms in the house, my son is still allowed to go over there and play. I just want to know that he's going to be kept safe.
And so you have that conversation with other families.
I do.
That's good to know. It's actually, I've never thought about it. It's a really good point. Really, that's very interesting. Okay, other questions from the audience? Over here on my right.
Hi, my name is Betty Larson, and like I think many people in the room here, I'm a mother with a 6 and an 8-year-old, and so very interested to learn about ways in which I can help their schools protect themselves. But I'm curious about when you approach these schools or the schools that decide not to do some of the programs. What is the motivation behind why they wouldn't want to do one of these? Is it just lack of information or understanding, or is there resistance you encounter?
Haven't encountered resistance so far, and we're in some of the reddest of red areas and some of the bluest in blue, and you know, we're in areas that, you know, I was in Moore, Oklahoma not too long ago. They did a fantastic job with our Say Something program. Very high gun ownership there. Similarly, in a place in Idaho I was not too long ago, very high gun ownership, because it's not about the gun. And I think once people get over the assumption of what Sandy Hook Promise is, and a lot of people do have an assumption to start off with, once you get past that, it's pretty plain sailing. The only time we've had issues getting programs into schools is just to find the right person in the school, because you need a champion. You always need a champion who's going to help it happen, because it's, you know, like a 40-minute training for these schools. So it's time. How are we going to fit this into the program? How are we going to sustain it, which we help with? So those are the sort of challenges that come up. But once it's in, we get repeat, we get expansion into other programs. And I remember one of our program coordinators down in Miami-Dade, because that was a top-down approach rather than an individual school blossoming up within a community. This was the Board of Education saying our entire public school district is going to have 3 of these programs over the next 3 years, and everyone is going to be trained. There was some resistance from that, but then after the first 100,000 kids were trained, some people, actually, parents were complaining because, well, how come my kid wasn't trained yet? So that was actually really interesting feedback.
Maria, anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. Great question. Over there, yes?
Yes, I have the mic. I really admire your dedication and commitment to moving forward and looking for preventative measures. I wonder if you could talk briefly about the signs that you spoke about, the domino effect. I know that means looking backwards. And also, in addition to Sandy Hook, what those signs were, if there were common signs between Sandy Hook and Columbine in Aurora, Colorado.
It's a great question.
I can speak a little bit about that. I made a film in 2010 about Virginia Tech, the Virginia Tech tragic shooting that killed 32 people. And the shooter, whose names, we're not using the shooter's names. That's an effort now called no notoriety to avoid bringing more attention to the shooters. But there are, consistent patterns of experiences of social isolation, of bullying, of developmental issues. I mean, there is a history of these patterns of behavior. So I think that David's comment about the dominoes certainly was referring to some of those, that at different points there were opportunities to intervene for this particular young boy and young man who had, significant issues and unfortunately, had access to very deadly weapons.
Nicole?
Just to build on that a little, and when I think about the Sandy Hook shooter in particular, had a fascinating private meeting for families with the FBI's BAU unit, which they had never met with families before, because they're profiling, and they're profiling what you see in the criminal reports are facts, and they can only talk about the absolute facts. But obviously, there's a lot of connecting the dots that is based in science but can't be reported. But a lot of the issues there were absolutely around social isolation and self-withdrawal, and then continuing to withdraw from society, breaking off communication, fascination with weapons, fascination with other shootings and mass shootings in particular, practicing along the way, and a lot of different events from early childhood onwards where this obsession with violence was there but was not dealt with professionally. So.
Yes. Right behind you. Right behind you.
Hi, my name's Larry Gelman, and I too have a great deal of respect, obviously, for what you're doing. I was wondering, and it seems to be a theme of most of the sessions I'm attending at the Ideas Festival, you come away looking at situations where the answer, or at least ways to make things better, are so obvious, and yet they're not getting done, or at least not getting done nearly as fast or extensively as they should. And in the case of your particular issue, my question is, has the recent infatuation or obsession with terrorism and shootings of a different kind taken any of the steam out of your issue? I mean, is there only so much gun energy to go around out there in the news media and in the circles of people who want to make the world a better place?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is, and I think one of the key points of the Newtown film is that as a nation, we are becoming a little bit desensitized to this because it is every day and it is sensationalized on the news, so we just tend to turn it off. And I think what the film does is resensitize people in a very, very important way. But in terms of terrorism and other acts of gun violence, I mean, actually, you think about Orlando. There were signs and signals along the way. We've heard different stories about the wife coming out and the potential signs and signals, the warning signs that she missed, the ex-wife, that violence had been a part of this throughout his life, employees, colleagues at his employers, again. So it might have had an ideological link with terrorism, but the same thing in terms of the signs and signals were there, and we just didn't know how to recognize them and put those connect the dots, put those dominoes together to stop the next domino from falling over. So I think gun violence will resonate with different people in different ways. And if they want to make change happen because of terrorism or suicide or 21st graders getting gunned down in their class, as long as it's something that they say, this is enough and we can do something about it, then I think that's one of the critical things that's keeping this movement gaining momentum, not taking the steam away.
Thank you, that's a great question. Maria, I'm curious, when do people, because there is a lot of background noise out there on the topic, what do you hope people will do after they finish seeing the film? What's the action point?
Well, as Nicole said, we hope that people will really feel it and heighten their sensitivity, speak out politically, take action in their community to create alliances, and to really, think more carefully also about other parts of the country and outside of your community. So as Nicole said, Newtown is really a metaphor for America in many ways, that this could be any town in America, any community, and the long-term devastation of these acts of violence break away at the fabric of all of our communities across the country. So we really need to look at it as a cohesive whole.
Question?
Hi, I'm Maya Dubin. I'm 15 years old. And I was wondering, you talked about before how millennials can use social media to get involved. But do you also think that social media could possibly be part of the problem? Because quite honestly, as a young adult, I can see how social media can be used for bullying and other acts of violence. So I'm just asking, what is exactly the middle ground here?
Great question. With every advance of technology, there are pros and cons. And in my opinion, the way to move things forward is always use it in a positive manner. If someone's promoting a video on Snapchat about cyberbullying or on Facebook, I don't even know if 15-year-olds use Facebook anymore. I only use Facebook because I'm an oldie. Turn it around, shame the person rather than share it. Promote positive videos instead. There are so many ways to use social media for the benefit of putting out positive messages and education and awareness. And I don't think there's anything wrong with, if you see something wrong on social media, call it out. What would be horrific is if we became really just totally became a nation of bystanders, just passively letting things happen in front of us, seeing it, but then not doing something. Definitely be that upstander instead, and make your voice be heard. Social media can be a massive way of promoting positivity and inclusion, because it's connecting kids from one state to kids to another. You know, it's not just about your community, and you can also avert tragedies with it as well. It doesn't have to be your own community. Mark Barden's niece, which was one of the precursors to Say Something when we were first figuring out our ideas. I think she lives in Delaware. She saw an Instagram photo of someone saying, let's do a Sandy Hook, with a picture of a school. She blew up the photo. It was a school, I think it was either Arkansas or Arizona, I can't remember exactly which. And she contacted the local authorities there. And it was they had the arsenal ready to go. So use social media as a positive. Don't allow it to become a negative.
And social media, Maria, can be such an important way also to communicate about a film, so certainly can be used there.
Yes, our hashtag is We Are All Newtown, and the handle as well. So please go to it.
Yeah, no.
Share it.
And how can people find out more about Sandy Hook Promise?
Well, first and foremost, go see the film, share the film, and then bring the film to your community to share it with others. Allow yourself to be touched by it. Allow yourself to imagine yourself in our shoes, because I trust, you have to trust me, you are going to want to do something afterwards. And then what you can do afterwards is go to sandyhookpromise.org, make the promise, decide what level of engagement you're ready for, because I know we're all busy people. If you want to be a promise leader and bring programs to your community, if you just want to share awareness and education, that's totally cool. If you want to donate, because we deliver these programs for free, but obviously there's a cost to delivering them, and just stay involved, and then advocate for sensible gun legislation and mental health reform when that opportunity is in front of you.
And Maria, how can people see Newtown the documentary?
Well,
Besides
we
tonight
are,
at 7:15.
Tonight at 7:15, that's right. We'll be in theaters in major markets in the fall. We'll be having a lot of one-off screenings across the country in communities, and we'll be sharing that information through our social media and the website. And you can support the campaign, join the campaign to prevent gun violence. And you know, we're looking for local and national partners. We have established collaborations, and they're really helping us get the work done, and we need more partners, so please sign on.
Yeah, absolutely. Nicole, tell us about how many people have become involved and what's been happening kind of on the ground.
Sure. Well, our organization, we're about 16 staff at the moment. We're expanding.
And you're based in Connecticut?
Pretty much all based in Connecticut. We have a couple of people in DC, a person down in Miami, a couple of people in Ohio as well, and we're expanding into other regions. We have about 800,000 followers, promise makers. So if you go to the website and make the promise, you become a promise maker. And you will get lots of emails from me, because that's one of the things I do. So be prepared for that. And then we have the 2,400 promise leaders who are bringing the programs to their communities. We have trainers, about 40 at the moment, probably triple that by the end of this year. And yeah, we've trained, like I said, 865,000 kids and adults in the last year and a couple of months.
865,000? Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
Those are audited figures. Those are genuinely audited figures.
How can people bring your program into their schools?
Everything is on the website, so you just go there and you can digitally download the programs and self-lead, or you can ask for a trainer to come out and deliver it to your school, or you can ask for a trainer to come out and train you, or train people in your schools. We do train the trainer as well. We train students. And then, like for example, in Danbury, Connecticut, we trained a group of students, and they went out across the rest of the district and taught all of the elementary schools, because they loved it that much and they were that empowered to do it. It's pretty easy. We've also just entered a partnership with Discovery Education. So 2 of our programs are now available on their digital platform. That'll reach about 50% of all public schools. And, you know, it depends on where you live. If there's a need in your school, contact us at the programs email at the website, and we'll help you out however we can.
All right, we have time for just a couple more questions. Yes. And you're Kim, right? You are the director of the film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Wait, hold on. We got a microphone coming because we're recording this.
I just wanted you to add on, because it's actually something we talked about a while ago about these different constituencies, how Sandy Hook Promise is working with law enforcement specifically. Did you say that already? I missed something.
Actually, no, I didn't. I focused a lot on school and community, so thank you for bringing that up. We also work very closely with juvenile court and law enforcement on training them and also helping bridge the gap between them and communities. We have a great relationship with Mahoning County Juvenile Court System in Ohio. They have been, we've trained a lot of the judges in different programs, and they're now spreading the programs out across the county as well. And just a few weeks ago, I was down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with the Sheriff's Association there. And that was an incredibly fascinating meeting because of the assumptions some people make about the name on the door. You know, it started off with a lot of people leaning back in their chairs, thinking that we were just another gun control organization. And by the end, everyone was really leaning in, and the sheriffs were like, because they have a significant gun violence issue in Baton Rouge. And they said, you absolutely can help us. So we're building that partnership right now.
Yes, right there in the middle.
Thank you very much for the presentation. It's beyond impressive what you're doing with your lives now. I just wonder if on the website or someplace there's a way that perhaps there could be a national voice by signing a petition or showing support of the case you're bringing against Remington to sort of make it kind of a national effort instead of
That's a great
locally.
idea. Let me have a think about that. And then I'll give you full credit for it when we do it.
What's that?
We do have petitions for legislative change for sure, but not specifically on the PLACA case.
One more question? Yes, in the back.
Hi, I actually have tons of questions, but I'll limit it to media violence, violence on television and video games. I mean, the kids, that's how they learn to deal with life. They see it every night, every day.
That's such a, get that question a lot, and it's a hard one because when you think about the impressions of violence that are seen globally, it's huge, but not everyone is going around shooting everyone. So my belief and opinion, and unfortunately there's not, for various reasons, there's no research on this to really prove with evidence, do violent games, violent video games, or violent media create violent behavior. The opinion of Sandy Hook Promise is that if you are prone to at-risk behaviors and you are then subjected to significant violent media, that could move you more towards escalation. And certainly in the issue of video games, where there's an at-risk individual who is planning on doing something, it does provide an opportunity to practice. And that was absolutely the case with Sandy Hook, and the police could tell by the way he reloaded his magazines. It was done in a gamer fashion rather than a responsible gun owner fashion. So there's nothing to tie. I mean, when you think about Japan or something like, tons and tons of violent imagery, they're all getting the exact same imagery as in America. Perhaps we've become a little bit more desensitized to it. The issue that we have that's different is the easy access, and that's where the difference lies.
Any other question? Okay, I want to, Maria, good luck tonight with your screening. And thank you for your wonderful film to you and Kim. It really is incredible. I encourage everyone to see it tonight, 7:15 at
Thank you.
Pepke Auditorium. And Maria, again, where can people find out more information about the film?
At newtownfilm.com is the website, and the social media handle is hashtag #WeAreAllNewtown.
And Nicole, I know that I'm sure I speak for all of us when we say we are so profoundly sorry for your truly unimaginable loss, but so deeply appreciative of the important work that you are doing. So thank you so much for what you're doing on behalf of really all of us. And again, just to give out the information about how people can engage.
Please watch the film and then get engaged by going to sandyhookpromise.org and bring our programs to your own community.
And thank you, everybody.